Hello and welcome to Nourish Your Biblical Roots Special Edition. I'm Bishop Paul Lanier, Chairman of the Board of Directors for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and I'll be your host today. We're broadcasting live from NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. During our time here, we'll be talking with special guests on a variety of topics, especially those that relate to Israel and Jewish-Christian relations and the workings of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. I can't tell you how excited I am today. Our guest has traveled to NRB all the way from Israel. Rabbi Tuly Weisz is the founder of Israel365, and I've already told him, in our bedroom, I looked at my wife a moment ago, in our bedroom, I've got a copy of the Bible, Israel365 Bible. It is extraordinary. So I interrupted myself. And the 360, which is a great organization dedicated to educating evangelical Christians about the biblical significance of Israel. His popular websites and emails and newsletters and social media platforms and columns reach hundreds of thousands of readers every day. Rabbi, thank you so much for making the time. It's such a joy to have you with us today.
It's great to be here with you, Bishop, and thank you for having me.
You are an Orthodox Jew. So tell me, how did an Orthodox Jewish rabbi show up at NRB today?
Well, I'll be honest. Last year I came with one of my colleagues from Israel365, and it was just the two of us. And we felt something very special in the air at NRB. So many influential Christians who love Israel and the Jewish people, but there were hardly any Jews from Israel here. They were talking a lot about Israel, but there weren't a lot. And so we came back this year and we said, what can we do to make NRB the place for Jews and Christians to form authentic relationships? We brought a delegation of over 20 from Israel.
Wow.
So it was a tenfold increase, and a real miracle and a real testament to how the NRB is really the central location for Christians who love Jews, and it's an honor to be here.
Tell me about your background, if you will. What inspired you to educate Christians, and Lord knows we need it, to educate Christians about Israel, and what was the genesis of that?
Yeah, it's I guess it's not such a common path. However, there was a bridge builder before me, and I would not be doing what I'm doing, for sure not, without Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein of blessed memory, who for me was a personal role model, a professional role model, and was always so kind to me. He really paved the way for rabbis to courageously reach out beyond the comfortable confines of our Jewish community and say this is important, and we're living in a unique time. And he recognized that. And it's not something that many Jews have experience with. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and I didn't know too many Christians. I really didn't. And most Jews don't grow up and have a relationship with Christians. We've kind of put these walls around ourselves in our communities. And only when I was already an adult, when I was already a rabbi, did I recognize how many Christians supported Israel unconditionally. They loved Israel without strings attached, and there was hardly anyone doing this kind of outreach, and I realized it was really important, and I reached out to Rabbi Eckstein.
Wow.
And he was very, very encouraging to me. Our families go back, actually. My grandfather and Rabbi Yechiel's father, Rabbi Eckstein Sr., were colleagues. They were both community rabbis. And Rabbi Eckstein Sr. was a rabbi in Canada. My grandfather was a rabbi in Columbus. And they knew each other. And they both went to Yeshiva University together. And the family connections go back Yechiel's, many of his siblings and my parents and my in-laws are friends with each other.
Oh.
My own wife and his nieces and nephews are friends. And so we're talking about 4 generations of friendship between our two families.
Wow.
And I always credit him with being my inspiration. And in fact, my first job when I moved to Israel, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew that I wanted to connect with Christians and I wanted to teach Christians about Israel. I thought this is so important for the strength of Israel and the Jewish people. I didn't realize how important it was, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And my first call when I landed in Israel was to Rabbi Eckstein.
Wow.
He was so gracious. He said, come right in. And I went to their office. And, I remember seeing that he had a coat hanger. And on his coat, it was Israel. You didn't get a coat hanger in Israel. But he had a prayer shawl. He had a talit hanging up on his coat hanger in his office. That was his cape. He was a superhero, and that was his cape. And he said, how can I help you?
Wow.
I said, well, first of all, thank you. And I said, I don't know, but, he then said, why don't you, write for us? I started writing for the fellowship, these devotionals, and they taught me everything I know. How a Jewish rabbi should talk to Christians. Because rabbis and many Jews are triggered by Christians. They're afraid of Christians, all of the history, all of the persecution. And so we don't know how to talk to Christians.
Let me ask you, back, in the 80s when Rabbi Eckstein founded the fellowship, it wasn't easy. Of course, Christians didn't understand him. That many of us, Christians, had never met a rabbi, not knowingly anyway, and it was difficult for him. He in his own community, he encountered some opposition, some challenges, some adversities. What about in your situation? Did you face those, and how pronounced are they now?
So that's a great question. I'm not controversial by nature. And I don't, I'm not looking to kind of stir things up. I'm not trying to be provocative here. I just really think that the Jewish people have a historic mission to be a light unto the nations.
Oh, yes.
And we have a job to do, and we're not doing it. And but there are people who find, fault with what we're doing. And even being at NRB, so got some emails. I wrote an article in the Jerusalem Post about why I think it's important for Israel to be involved with Christian media, to be changing the narrative. All we do is complain about how the media is so unfair to Israel. Well, here we have the largest gathering of Christian communicators. Of course we need to be here. And I wrote an article in the Jerusalem Post about that, and of course got some responses and some criticism that, you can't trust the Christians.
Yeah,
and don't you know all the Christians want to convert us or want to kill us? I mean, it's something that the Jewish people are so traumatized by our history.
Understandably.
But it's changing.
Yeah.
It's changing. And I think more and more Jews in the Orthodox community who are Torah observant, who live their lives according to the Torah, and who recognize that we have a destiny and we have a mission to do. So the Orthodox Jews are the first ones who are starting to build relationships with Christians. And again, Rabbi Eckstein was definitely the first, but more and more Orthodox Jews, and the group that we brought here, 20. All Orthodox. All Orthodox, yeah. It's not, secular Jews who I love very much, but who don't have the same language to talk to Christians, because our common language is the Bible, right? We have the Bible in common. And so for Orthodox Jews who every day are faithful to God and who are reading the Bible, there's so much in common between Jews and Christians. And it's the more and more of the Torah and faithful Jewish community are starting to realize how important this outreach and these relationships are.
Well, you know, you just stepped up and said, okay, my people have some work to do. Let me ask you this. What do you need from me? What am I missing as a Christian? What are Christians missing? What do you wish we knew about you, about Israel, that we're not there yet?
Well, I don't think there's any dogma or any pieces of information that we need to share. I think we need to share each other's hearts more. I think that we need to be in relationship with each other more. I think more Jews need to invite Christians over for Shabbat dinner.
Wow.
And more Christians need to be seeking those relationships and invitations. And I know it's not comfortable. I know that it's not something that we're used to doing.
It's awkward. It's awkward, but it's like, you know, you were talking about that most or a lot of Jews don't know a lot of Christians. I remember I came down one Sunday night, I turned the television on, and there's Rabbi Eckstein of blessed memory, and I'm watching him, and this is my fault, but I thought all rabbis looked like the Rebbe, you know, in Brooklyn 770. So I'm looking and I'm thinking, this doesn't look like a rabbi. And so he was teaching me, and it's an awkward statement for Christians to make. But I realized, and I told my own congregation, when I watched Rabbi Eckstein that night, he was helping to save my soul in ways I didn't even know needed redemption. And it was introducing me to a whole other side of my faith I didn't even know was there.
Right.
And when Christians come to Israel, and a lot of us are, what do you want us to see first, or what do you think is most important for us to see?
Right. So a lot of Christians come to Israel and they see the holy sites, but they don't necessarily meet the Jewish people. And I think that, you know, you don't need to spend any money on buses. Just stay and walk around Jerusalem and talk to the Jewish people there and get to know the shopkeepers who are trying to run their businesses under missile attack.
Yes.
I mean, who else?
Yes.
Do you know any shopkeepers in America who have to worry if they're going to be open or closed on the busy days of the week, if they're going to be able to put food on their table because they might have to close for the day because there's sirens? And so getting to know Israelis who each one of them is walking with such faith.
And stories, such stories.
Exactly. And I think
it doesn't cost anything to just sit at the wall.
Sitting at the wall, talking to the people of Israel, building relationships with each other. And you know, you are the international fellowship of Christians and Jews. And I think the key word there is fellowship.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And it's so amazing to see Yael really filling in for the enormous shoes that her father left her, and really taking the organization, and of course, Bishop, with your assistance, with your leadership, taking it to all new heights, and in a very relevant way. Israel's different than when Rabbi Eckstein started. Israel is a lot wealthier of a place than when he started, and she's shifting the message and doing such important work in Ukraine and rescuing Jews and bringing Jews on Aliyah from Ethiopia. Unbelievable.
Man. She's extraordinary. She's remarkable. Let me ask you, how are we doing? How are you and I and our peoples, our communities, what do you think the state of Jewish-Christian relations is right now?
So it's a great question. It's a lot better than it's ever been before. First of all, my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. My grandmother is still alive, and she lives in Cleveland, and she's a Holocaust survivor. And she asked me where I'm going to be this week, and I said, a Christian conference. And she still says, well, why in the world would you ever want to do that? And so she remembers that, the persecution. But I'm telling her that, the Christians today are not the Christians that you could have ever imagined in your wildest dreams.
Wow.
We're living in a golden era of Jewish-Christian relationships. And since the time that Christianity started, we have never been in a better time period than we are now. It's unbelievable and it's miraculous. It's one of the untold miracles of Israel. There's so many miracles that are happening every day in Israel that sometimes we forget about the miracles. And this is one of those miracles that no one's even talking about.
Yes.
That after centuries of opposition, Jews and Christians are now in fellowship together and studying Bible together.
Yes.
So that's, on the one hand, right, it's never been better. On the other hand, I think that the persecution, not only of Jews, but the persecution of Christians is causing all of us to recognize that we have to scale this up big time. It's not enough what we have right now. We can't be complacent with where we're at right now. I know that the fellowship is definitely the most influential and largest humanitarian charity organization that raises hundreds of millions of dollars. But the truth is there's billions of Christians in the world. And it should be billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Not because Israel needs the financial assistance, but Christians need to connect with the miracles.
That's exactly right. That's it right there. It's not so much that Holocaust survivors are in need and children are, and we that's obvious. But one of the equal needs is the need to give, not just of those who need to receive something. We need to become those persons who give. Let me just take one more question. I thank you for taking the time. I know your schedule is just crazy here at this arena. But can you just share with us your own aliyah? You're from Ohio originally. When did you know, when did you say to yourself, to people around you, this is it, I'm going?
Well, I'll tell you a story. So I was in my office in my synagogue. I was the rabbi of my grandfather. I mentioned my grandfather, Rabbi David Stasky of blessed memory. And I became the rabbi of his synagogue after he passed away. I'm in my office and I get a book in the mail called Standing with Israel, Why Christians Support Israel. And it was before Amazon. This is 15 years ago. I didn't order that book. I didn't even know how the book arrived. And, kind of the title caught my attention because, I never heard of Christians really standing with Israel. Why do Christians stand with Israel? So I'm flipping through the book. It came from David Brogg, who at the time was the director of Christians United for Israel, another amazing organization. And it had a story in there that when Theodor Herzl was founding Zionism, so he got a lot of opposition from the Jewish community. They didn't want to go back. And he said, well, he was also getting opposition from the Ottoman Empire. And they said, the Arabs here don't want you. Why don't we give you a tract of land in Uganda? Right?
Or Argentina.
And so Herzl was a pragmatic person. He wasn't particularly, Torah observant. So he brought it up to the Zionist Congress, and they voted on it. And it divided the Zionist Congress in half, actually. And many people felt that it was a good idea to escape from the anti-Semitism. And a pastor in Chicago named William Blackstone, right?
Yes, sir.
Fellowship's hometown. So a pastor in Chicago named William Blackstone, he heard about this because the Zionist Congress was in the news even in America, in Chicago. And he couldn't believe that after thousands of years that the Jewish people are finally going to go back to Israel. And now they're considering a detour to Africa. So he takes a Bible off of his shelf and he starts underlining all the references to Israel. He sends it to Herzl, and it arrives to Herzl. And Herzl was so conflicted by this division over the Uganda plan that it really broke his heart, and he died. When he died with a Blackstone Bible by his bedside, according to David Brogg's book. So I was so moved by that. I started reading the Bible and looking for these passages about Israel. It started with Genesis, leave your father's house, the land that I will show you, and go to Israel. And there I will make you a great nation. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And I said to my wife, honey, we got to go. This is, we are faithful to the Word of God. We take it seriously. We take it literally. We keep kosher. We keep Shabbat on Saturdays. And if it says God said to Abraham to leave your father's home and go to Israel. We need to consider that deeply. We need to pray on that. And it was a hard decision because we had this really special life in Columbus, in my grandfather's community. My family lives there. And but we decided to follow God and follow the Bible, and we moved to Israel. As a result, very simple, reading the Bible. So I recommend it. I highly recommend it to Jews, to Christians, to anybody, the whole world. Everybody just needs to be spending more time reading the Bible, but reading the Hebrew Bible from a Jewish perspective.
Oh, everything.
And for
the 365 Bible.
Yeah, is the Israel Bible. The Israel Bible is meant to help Christians connect with their faith and to strengthen their faith by having a deeper understanding
completely.
of the Jewish roots.
We don't, what we call the Christian scriptures or the New Testament, it's really hard to understand what it truly, ultimately means unless we have been able to engage the roots of our faith, which is the Hebrew scriptures. And I can't thank you enough. When you mention Herzl, I think about so many of those extraordinary men and women who at such early ages literally poured their lives out, died at such a premature time. Jabotinsky, so many of the others as well, who poured themselves for the cause, for Israel. And I thank you for all you're doing for Jewish Christians. As a Christian, I want to thank you for the sacrifices you've made and continue to make. And thank you especially today for coming and sitting at this table and sharing with us. It really mattered, and I thank you, sir.
Well, what a treat to speak with you, Bishop. Thank you.
God bless you.